Hello everyone, welcome back to Redgate's Community Circle. Be sure to check the Community Circle on the Redgate Hub for more classes and activities. Today, this is week 3 of the Introduction to SQL Server Reporting Services. And today, we're going to talk about one of my absolute favorite things in reporting services, parameters. Before I show you parameters, there's a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, are there any questions? And you can ask questions in the forum, the Redgate Community Forum that's set up just for this class. So be sure to ask your questions there, and I'll take a look at them every day or so. And also, here's something that might happen to you, and it actually just happened to me a few minutes ago, so I can show it to you. Visual Studio tries to be really helpful and tries to get you to disable extensions that you might have enabled. I have seen this in both Visual Studio 2017 and in 2019. So it doesn't matter which one of them you're using, you might see it in both. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my virtual machine. And here's the report we're going to get to today. But up at the top, I have this yellowish message telling me that reporting services project caused 25 seconds of unresponsiveness. And if you disable it, it might improve your experience. The problem is if you click disable this extension, reporting services will be gone. And I've noticed that any project you try to open, even if you go back and enable it, still will be messed up. So if you see this message, click never show this message again. That will keep it from popping up. Because what happened to me is I accidentally clicked disable this extension, and I've seen it for some of my students as well. Then I couldn't go back, and even after I re-enabled the extension again, I could not go back and open those previous projects. They were kind of, something must have happened to mark them. You could open them up, but you couldn't see the reports or the data sources. So be really, really careful there. So I'm going to go ahead and pop back to the slides. There we go. And again, here's the resources, just in case you haven't seen them in the past. We get the live classes through Zoom. You can watch the video either by going to Redgate's Community Circle playlist on the Redgate Hub or to Redgate University out on YouTube. The code, slides, and assignments will be out on GitHub. And here's the forum. Just go to the forum and just kind of search for this. You should be able to find it. And there is an article on Simple Talk that I wrote a couple of years ago, maybe last year, about using parameters. And I think even though watching me do it, I think it'd be really helpful for you to go step by step through that article as well. All right, so parameters, what are they for? Parameters allow you to let the end user who's running the report select or enter information that's going to control either the data that shows up on the report or the behavior of the report. For example, maybe coloring or other configurable properties. You'll see a parameters section in the report data window, and that report data window is very, very important when it comes to reporting services. That's where a lot of the magic happens. in a report. So it makes a report interactive, gives the user control most of the time for filtering. And if you add a parameter to your query in your data set, and I'll show you how to do that, it automatically sets up a generic parameter for you, and you can go in and modify the properties. And that's what the bulk of this class today is going to be about. And the way that you add that to the data set is by adding an @ parameter in the where clause. So you might have something like customer ID equals @ customer ID. And that @ customer ID is kind of like a variable, and the end user is going to supply that information. This also works with stored procedure parameters if you're familiar with those. All right, so let's go ahead and jump back to Visual Studio. I'm going to click this never show this message again so I don't see that and accidentally disable reporting services. This is really the end product of what I'm going to try to show you today. Notice that there are 3 parameters for the end user. For example, here I could select multiple items. I can choose, and notice that when I chose the subcategory refreshed. Let's view the report. And I also have let me go ahead and get Zoom running, zoom it. And I can also show right on the report the parameters that were chosen. And I really think this is an important thing to do, because you might have a report that someone prints out and leaves it sitting around, and they're not really going to know how that data was filtered unless it's part of the report. So that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to go take this one back to design view and start with this one. So this one is just a list of products, and there's no parameters yet. There's nothing that I can choose from up here at this point, just a list of the products. So to get a parameter, all I have to do is double click the data set. And when it comes up, I'm going to change the where clause, get rid of this semicolon. I'm going to add and color equals @ color. And I put the semicolon back in. So what's happening here is I've just added another predicate to the where clause saying I want to be able to control the color that I see. This particular query, I've also changed the color that comes back to get rid of the nulls. Now you can work with nulls in reporting services. I have just found that it's not that easy. You either want a null or you want items. You really can't combine it in the same parameter anyway. So if, like in this case, what we're going to end up doing is giving you the ability to choose multiple items, and some of those items are null. Inside this query, it just doesn't really handle null well. So that's why I went ahead and changed all my nulls in the data to just NA. So typically null in reporting services just means don't fill anything in. Okay. So let's see, did that work? Nope, I must have hit cancel, type that in again. Okay, click OK. And it's asking me for a value here, which might mean I've done something new, something wrong, could not update. So what, oh, I left the word and out. So typically when I see that, I know there might be a problem. Make sure it's and color equals color. And it worked. Okay, so when I go over to the parameters, I will see that there is this parameter called @color. Okay, I'm going to double click it and take a look at it, and there are tons of options here. The name of it is how I'm going to refer to that in any expressions or code, but there is also a prompt that I can change to make it user friendly for the end users. So I'm going to say select a color. Okay. There are different data types. For example, if I would like a date picker to show up, I can choose date time. That way they can choose from a little calendar. I'm going to leave it at text, but otherwise, if I choose Boolean, they can only choose like a yes, no, or an integer. It's got to be a number, but it must be a whole number. Float, you can have decimals. I'm going to leave it at text. Notice you can allow blank values, which are not the same as null. Null, which is basically they're not going to fill anything in, not quite what I'm going for here, or allow multiple values, which I'll get to. And you can also have some hidden or internal parameters. I have used that on occasion, for example, to grab the end user's Windows ID was one situation. We're probably not going to do that in this class. There's some other things. We're going to talk about those in a bit. So I'm just going to click OK. And notice that the select a color parameter is now showing above my report design. I'm going to click preview. And now I can type a color in, blue. And view the report. And now every product is blue. Every product that is displayed is blue. So now I'm just going to pop back over to my slides and let's talk about the next item. Default parameters. So often you will have a report that's got 5, maybe even 10 parameters. Not going to get that many in this class, but I have seen that in the real world. I've probably even created reports like that myself. In some cases, there are certain answers that are probably likely. So what you can do is automatically have a value filled in. So let's say, I mean, you can do it with an expression that gets the current date or current year, something like that, or something else that's likely. You know, maybe all my managers have the ability, have the rights to look at the sales data from any part of the country, but they're more likely to care about their own territory. So you could have an expression behind the scenes that automatically chooses their category based on who's running the report and automatically fill that in and give them the choice to look at other areas if they would like. Okay, so the user always has the ability to fill in something else. So let's go back over to the reports. And let's say that since my favorite color is blue, I would like it to always default to blue. This will default for all the end users, so maybe I shouldn't have said it like that, but let's just go ahead and type in blue. Click OK, and when I run the report, it's automatically going to have blue filled in, and it's automatically going to run. So this is, basically a feature that can save some time. I am going to remove that default by just clicking delete here and click OK. Let's go back to the slides. Notice that I've had to type in the color blue. A lot of times there will be an ID number that the end user may not remember, or just a long list of items. So wouldn't it be nice if they could choose from a drop-down box instead? So over here in this image, you can see where I have typed in a list of colors, okay? Notice that there is a label and also a value. The label is what the end user will see. The value is what SQL Server needs in the query. And often those are not the same. And I will have some examples of that for you later on in the class. So the example on the screen is a hard-coded list of values. This might be useful, for example, for the months of the year, something that's not going to change. And the reason I say that is because you can also pull the available values, the available list from a query, because typically data is going to change over time. Let's say I have a list of departments and I decide to hard code that. And then we do some kind of a restructuring where we have some new departments and we've merged a couple of departments and we've made some changes. Now my list is out of date and I have to manually go update that. So it's really handy to have it come from a data set. This is one area where shared data sets are actually useful, because what I've been telling you is that use shared data sources and embed data sets. But parameter lists that are going to be reused from different, reused in different reports, and maybe even your savvy business user who are kind of building their own dashboards might like these. So this is a situation where you might want to make a shared data set. I am not going to cover that today unless we have time at the end, just because there's a lot to cover with parameters lists, but I will cover it before we get through the end of the course. It might be the last week when I talk about deploying. Okay, so let's go back out and learn what I need to do to have a drop-down list of colors. Well, first of all, let's do it the hard-coded way. So I'm going to click available values. I'm going to specify values and click and I have to fill in a label and a value. Remember, a label is what the end user will see. The value is what SQL needs. So let me type in blue, blue, click add, let's go with red, red, and let's go with silver, silver. I'm not going to type in all the colors, there's about 10. That's enough to just demonstrate the point. So now, instead of typing in the color, I can choose from a list. So I'm going to choose silver and click View Report, and I don't see any. I wonder if I've misspelled silver. Let's go back and look. Oh, misspelled it. So here's a situation. And this was kind of good that I did this. The label looked correct, but the value was misspelled, sliver instead of silver. So since the value is what SQL needs, So that's why it didn't work. So that kind of was a really fortuitous accident there. Let me try it again. Okay, chose silver again. And now it worked. Okay, so the label is what the end user sees. The value is what is passed back to SQL Server. Okay, so I might want a list of colors that's coming from the database. So how do I do that? The first thing I have to do is create another data set. So I'm going to have a separate data set for every parameter. So I right click, add data set. If for some reason that list comes from another database, then you'll have multiple data sources set up. I'm just going to call this color, use a data set embedded in my report. I'm going to use AdventureWorks, and I'm going to type in select distinct color from production.product order by color. And actually, I'm going to change color to I'm going to change it to say NA. If for some reason it is null, okay? Typically, you'd have a list of colors to choose from, but in this case, I'm just pulling it from the production product table because there is no list like that. It would have been helpful if I had that list. So I'm going to go back to the parameter and go to available values. And this time, instead of specifying values, I'm going to get values from a query. It gives me a warning that there could be a performance impact because this list is making a database call. And I can choose between product list or color. So in this case, I'm going to use the data set that I set up specifically for this parameter called color. The value field is color, and the label field is color. And I could still have a default value if I wish. It's still allowed. When I click preview, now I'm going to select a value, but I got a list of all the values. I'm going to click NA just to see what comes up. Nothing came up, which I would have expected it to. I might have to tweak my query, or maybe I've done something wrong somewhere. We click black, and black comes up. Let me click blue, and blue comes up. So I'm going to take a look at my query for color. Select that is correct. And in my product list, so I have to also put it here. That's why that NA is displayed here, but I'd also have to put it here. I'm going to go ahead and do that because you might be thinking, oh, that's going to be a performance issue, which theoretically it would be. There is no index on color, so the table's going to have to be scanned anyway. So it's going to be a bad performing query no matter what. And again, when you work with this, you're not going to get everything perfectly right at the beginning. There's always tweaking to do with any code that you write. So now the NA is worked up. So make sure that that where clause has what you expect. So that's working pretty well. I am going to pop back over to the slides. and we're going to talk about cascading parameters. This, to me, where it really gets fun. Notice in the image that the category bikes was chosen, and in the subcategory, there's a list of the different types of bikes. So what if your end user needs to be able to filter by subcategory, but there's like 25 different subcategories? Well, it's easy enough to start filtering by the category and then use that choice to filter subcategory. So what this does is let you base one value on another value. It is a little tricky to set up. I'm going to just run through it once. However, I suggest that you go back and play this section a few times and try to go step by step along with it to get the hang of it. And that article that I pointed out also has a section where it shows you how to do that. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to do is filter my product list by subcategory. I'm going to go ahead and double-click product list and add another where clause. Let's make it P production subcategory ID equals at subcategory. Okay. Cross my fingers here. Click OK. Nope. Didn't like it. Oh, product, not production. Product subcategory ID equals subcategory. And click OK. Still is not liking that. Prod. Okay. I think what I should have probably done is just copied it right out of here. I think I'll do that. Just in case there's a typo I don't see. And click OK. All right, it's much happier. And we now have the subcategory parameter. We're going to allow text. However, it really needs to be a number. So maybe I'll just change that to integer. And click OK. The problem is, now when I run this, I've got to know what the subcategories are. And offhand, I really don't know. I'll click, oops, got to pick a color. Pick black. And I did get some results. So subcategory 1 must be a legitimate subcategory. So what I'm going to do is create a list of subcategories. I'm going to open up SSMS here just to help me write my query. I might have it saved somewhere. And of course, it's taking its sweet time. One thing I want to point out, if you are playing along and want to look at the solutions that I post, you will have to go in and edit the data source, because if I'm using my other VM that I've used in the past, it's got a named instance. This one does not. I'll probably continue to use this one for the rest of the class. not really sure, but you know, that's one thing that you'll have to do if you pull down the solution from week to week. Okay, so I'm just going to type in select star from production product subquery, and I need the product subcategory ID, and I need the name. Okay, so I'm going to grab that query and go back and add yet another data set. I'll call this one subcategory. One nice thing about doing all these parameters is it gives you some practice creating data sets. Use a data set embedded in the report, choose AdventureWorks, paste in the query, and click OK, and cross my fingers, it worked. Then I'm going to go back up into subcategory, go to available values, get values from a query. I'm going to choose the subcategory data set. This is different. The value field is the ID. The name is what the end user will see. I'm going to click OK. So I'm going to run that. And I'm going to select silver. And I'm going to select a subcategory of, let's see, how about mountain bikes? I'm just picking that because I know I'll get some results, right? At least I think I will. And there's some results. Okay, so that's a really long subcategory list. Wouldn't it be nice if I could filter first for category? So what I have to do, and this is where the tricky part comes in, is I have to go to category, double click category, and change the query here so that it asks for, double click subcategory so that it asks for category, where product category ID equals at category ID. Okay, so if I go back to SQL Server, notice that there is a product category ID in that table. Okay, number one is bikes. All right, so now I've added a parameter to the data set for one of my other parameters. Okay, and it's not happy. Product category ID. Okay, like that. I'm going to go back into the subcategory, go to available values. I'm sorry. I'm going to go into category. So now I've got a new parameter called category. Double click that, go to available values, get values from a query, choose I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so before I do that, I'm just going to run the report. I'm going to choose silver. I'm going to choose 1. Again, this is confusing stuff. After I choose 1, subcategory refreshes, and I just get a list of the different types of bikes. Okay, so I don't get ahead of myself. All right, so what I have to do now is create a data set for category to pull from. I'm going to go back to Management Studio. I'm going to do product category ID and name. So now I've got a list of the categories to choose from. Copy. Go to data sets, add a data set. I'm going to call this one category. Use a data set embedded in my report. Choose the data source and type in the category. Okay, so now product list has a filter on subcategory. Subcategory has a filter on category. Okay, I'm going to go to the category parameter. I'm going to make this just an integer, available values, get values from a query. Choose the category data set, choose the category ID, and choose the name for the label. And click preview. So now I have to select, let's choose black, accessories. And when I do, subcategory refreshes, and then I can choose, let's see, bottles and cages. Hopefully there's something that comes back. Nope. Let's say bike racks. I might not get anything back. Okay, I'm going to go back to my old standby of the silver bikes because I know I'll get something back. There we go. So that's how cascading parameters work. I even got confused a little bit as I was going along. So it is tricky. Just be sure to, maybe diagram it out and just do it step by step and you'll get it. Let's go back to the slides. Another thing that you might want to do is control a value or property on the report based on the value of a parameter. So that little item here is the colors that were chosen. In this case, multiple colors were chosen. I'm also going to show you how to do that in this next demo. But this way, you've got that value displayed on the report. So we're going to display the parameters, handle multiple values in the next demo. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is look at the multiple values. So I'm going to go back into color and I'm going to choose allow multiple values. The problem is when I do this, I will break the report. So when I click preview, I'm going to select multiple colors, okay? And go ahead and select bikes and mountain bikes. When I do this, I'm going to get a problem. An error occurred during local processing. Error occurred for the dataset product list. Incorrect syntax near comma. So what in the world is going on? I can tell you just because I've run into this error before and I know how to fix it. If you don't have somebody helping you with this one, it might be a bit confusing. So what this means is that a comma-delimited list of colors are sent back to the SQL query. So basically, if I look at what's sent to SQL Server, it comes back as product subcategory. I'm sorry, let's look at color, not subcategory. It comes back as color equals blue, comma, green, comma. It comes back with a comma delimited list of colors. And that's not going to work in this SQL query. So if you're familiar with T-SQL at all, you will know that you can have a list of items to filter on in parentheses with the keyword in, an in list. So let's change it to that. So what I have to do is get rid of this equal sign, change it to in, and put it in parentheses. Now, if you were writing the query in SQL Management Studio, this really wouldn't work. It would just return one value, a comma delimited, one string value that's got some commas in it. But what's happening in reporting services is it's dynamically recreating the statement so that it will, when it eventually hits SQL Server, it will be the real comma delimited list in parentheses. All right, so I'm going to click OK to save this. I'm going to hit preview. I am going to choose multiple colors here, including silver. I'm going to choose bikes. My subcategory list refreshes, and I'll choose mountain bikes in the view report. And now it works. So if you switch to multi-value, make sure that you change your equals to an in list, and it should work. Now, if you are working with stored procedures, and I think I'll add that, I'm not sure if I'll add that next week, but at some point we'll talk about stored procedures. The stored procedure is going to get that list back as one value. You're going to have to do some processing on the SQL side to fix that. So let's go back to design view. The next thing I want to show you is how to add those items in the top of your report so that the end user will be able to see what the filters were, especially if the report gets printed. So what I need to do is kind of lower this a little bit. I'm going to grab the bottom of the header. Did I get it? Yeah. So that's what I've got selected now is the text box. I get some room in the rest of the header. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drag over color. Before I do that though, I'm going to switch color back to a regular, not a multi-value. There's a reason for that. And click preview. So now I can only choose one color. I'm going to choose my road bike because I know something, or well, road bike or mountain bike, something will come up. Let's go back to mountain bike. And there's that value, silver. Well, what does silver mean? Okay, why don't we go into this? This is what's pretty cool. I can just click to the left of the word color and type in something like color equals. I'm going to make that wider. Color equals, and then you've got the little brackets that designates it's a placeholder. So that's really, really easy to do. Select my color, select bikes, select mountain bikes. So now we see color equals silver. So that's really useful. So what if I do want to have that multiple item? I'm going to change color parameter back to allow multiple and preview that. And instead of getting the list of colors, I've got an error. Why is that? Well, the reason is this is now kind of like an array. I'm going to have to do a search for, hopefully I've got some code. Let's see, 3 queries, yes. Should have grabbed this up earlier. Actually, I can just throw it into Notepad, that'll make it easier. Here is the expression. I would say, you know, copy that down someplace, keep it handy because it's not easy to figure out. So what I'm going to do, and I don't believe I've shown you this yet in this class, what I'm going to do is right click and go to text box properties and go to, where's my, actually what I'm going to do is get rid of this, add a new text box and start over. So I didn't really see what I wanted to see. Okay, right click and go to expression. It was grayed out before, but I really want to get to expression. And when that pops up, I can type in a formula here. It must start with an equal sign, kind of like an Excel formula. I'm just going to paste it in. Only need 1. So basically what's going on here is instead of just typing the word color or colors, I've got quote marks around it, a plus sign, then I'm using the join function, and we're going to talk more about these functions in a couple of weeks, and then I can choose the parameter. I'm getting a red squiggly, so I'm wondering if it doesn't like it because the case is different. There we go. So that red squiggly went away, so now it's happy. So the case matters. I'm going to click OK. And now notice that it says EXPR instead of that formula being available for you to see. So once things get a little more complex, you're not going to be able to see it as a placeholder. You're going to have to look at the properties of the expression in order to get to the formula. So we're going to click preview. I'm going to choose black, blue, gray, silver, and choose bikes and choose mountain bike and click view report. And so now I have a comma delimited list of the colors that were chosen and more than one color of bike showing up. Okay. One interesting thing before I forget about it is this grid here where it shows you the different parameters. You can drag and drop and rearrange them. So I'm going to move things like this. So I got my color and then I've got subcategory and category on the same line. But I'm going to show you a problem that can happen if you don't have them in the right order. What I mean by the right order, you got to choose a category before you can choose a subcategory. So when I preview this, at some point, I get an error already. I can't have subcategory. Subcategory needs a default value that you get from category IDs. So those have to be swapped. So in case you see that error. So this is easy enough to fix. I'm just going to drag this one over here, drag category back over where it goes, and subcategory here. Now when I click preview, it should work. Select a color, black, blue, silver, select a category, bikes, select a subcategory, mountain bikes. So that's one of the nice things that it'll let you do. Just kind of rearrange these to where it makes sense. So let's say you had like 10 different parameters, you probably just wouldn't want them just kind of running, you know, in any haphazard order. So you can rearrange them to where it makes sense. Okay, so we have added the ability to add the list of colors, but wouldn't it be cool to add category and subcategory ID? For those, we only have one item to choose. Well, that could be changed, but let's go in and just drag the category ID in here, okay? And take a look at how the report looks. I'm going to select a color, blue, black, silver. Select a category, bikes. Subcategory will refresh. Choose mountain bikes again, view report. And I see the number 1 here. Why am I seeing the number 1? Because that's really the value that's held in the parameter, right? The end user has a nice friendly list to pull from, but under the covers, it's really a number. But there's a way around that. So I'm going to go back to design view, right click, and go to expression. And first of all, I'm going to add category at the beginning with the ampersand. So I'm going to use that string. Let's make it category colon. And then instead of value, I have a drop-down list here. And I can choose label. Okay, label is what the end user sees. I'm going to click OK. I'll click preview. I'm going to select a color. I'm just going to select silver, select bikes, select mountain bikes, and click view report. And now you've got category bikes. Okay. I'm going to show you one more thing that you can do with a report, just for fun. Since I have a couple of minutes left before the end of the hour, I am going to add a, let's see, I'll just add a text box, okay? I am going to manually add a parameter list. I can do that. Previously, they were created automatically for me. So it's going to ask me for a color. So what I want to do is go to the text box properties and go to the fill. That is the kind of the background color of the text box. So right now there's no color. What I can do is click this FX button that will bring up the expression builder. I'm going to click equals and I'm going to go to parameters and double click color. Okay, and click OK. So it's not the value that the parameter is going to. I'm sorry, it's not the value that's going to the text box. It's the parameter is going to the value of the background. So let's go to preview. Hopefully this works. I'm going to type in blue and click view report, and there it turned blue. I'm going to type red, click view report, and it turns red. So we'll talk a lot more about things like that when we get to one of the classes, you know, in a few weeks. We'll talk more about the expressions and controlling things on the report. I think that is all I want to show you about parameters. There's a little bit more having to do with default parameters and using an expression there. I'm going to save that for later. Be sure to go out and take a look at the GitHub page that I showed you towards the beginning of the hour, where you can download a homework assignment, download the slides, download the solution for the homework. Take care, and I'll see you next week.